Well,
Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Open Door Policy. I am your host, yet again, Sailor Boy Troy. We are back with my illustrious co-host, Brandon. Sorry.
how you doing,
He's right off the go.
SPG? How are you?
Good,
Thanks.
my man. Good.
Yeah,
Thanks
it's
for
been
having
another
this
good week.
episode.
It's been another good week, and we got ourselves a special guest today. Usha has come here to share her story on resilience and surviving. So I think what we're going to be talking about, or what we are talking about, is the cult, Children of God. And if you don't know anything about this kind of situation or this cult, it really, 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 really hurt a lot of people. And we're going to discuss and go through a lot of the background. How does it get to that point? How does it get to that point? And we're going to go through that. And without further ado, Troy, do you have anything that you want to add to before we get Usha to introduce herself?
No, I just wanted to welcome to the stage Usha. She and I have been chatting for quite a bit. This is where the idea for the episode came from. A few months back, we did have a sit down. I think it was a 2.5-hour conversation, from everything to life in the cult to moving forward. We met through a art gallery, through a bunch of other an art collective essentially, and they happened to be putting on a display of life in the cult, and we all started talking, and here we are today. So without us rambling on too much, I'd like to welcome to the show, Usha. Thank you for coming, and just tell us your story, who you are, what you're about, and yeah, let's have some fun.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the platform. It's actually been a deep desire of mine to, through my own healing, be able to help other people as well. So, thank you for this opportunity. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's not easy. It's not easy coming on to any live stream.
Yeah, it's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Myself, I'm still having a hard time going on live, but it is something very special that you're here and willing to share a part of your story. And sorry, it really just absolutely hurts, man, to hear the horrific things. But we're gonna get through. I think you're the survivor.
Are you gonna get through it?
I'm gonna get through it. I'm gonna get through it. And
I'll help you guys get through it. I'm gonna hold your hand. It's okay.
So, if you can just kind of can you tell us early life?
Sorry, what? Sorry, can you hang on 1 second?
Not a problem.
Sure, not a
Sorry,
problem.
guys.
Well, yeah. So I guess I could say they did this diorama, I think it was about 2 years ago at this it was called the DMT art event of all things. And there were artists everywhere. And they had few of their friends that they've been in a collective with since they all left together, decide to put this
Sorry.
thing on.
Not a
Hello
problem.
again. We were just talking about how the diorama was going when we met at the gallery there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a lot. Don't let me take any airtime from you. Please carry on what you were saying.
No, no.
Early life in the cult, and just tell us what day in the life
Yeah.
was. You were
So what-
born into it. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I don't know how much any of our the viewers know about the group or not, or if you had any like you know, any prior what
yeah,
do you call
let's
it,
do it.
interlude into the group, or
Yeah,
am I
let's
just
let's do that. Troy, can you put up a brief just say like David Byrd, the children of the cult, children of the God. Let's
Yep.
put it all up, and we'll we won't go through like all the history.
Let's allow her to give us just a back history. She's the expert here. So we should
Yeah.
just kind of give everyone a rundown of what they should know about the cult and what you
um
know and the difference between
yeah.
being born into it and being brought into it, and just go from there.
Okay. So the Children of God started well before I was born. It started in the time of when the hippie movement was also kind of at its, you know, peak, I think. And so it was all started by this man and his 4 children who so this man David Brandberg was the son of a pastor and a preacher, a woman, I guess. They were both like pastors. And so he was raised Christian. And he was, after having, you know, tried to pastor different churches and different places in the United States, he kind of became very, I don't know, weary with the whole like church that, and at the same time he saw the need to for like there was this whole generation which were the hippies at the time that were rebelling against, you know, everything in society, from rebelling against the churches to the parents to the educational system to the war that was going on in Vietnam. There were so many things that they were rebelling against, and they wanted a different system, you know. Yet at the same time they all seemed kind of lost, as he put it, kind of like he quoted a sheep, like as sheep having no shepherd. And so he kind of took that role on himself, saying, I'm going to be their shepherd, you know, kind of like I'm going to be the father they never had. Or so that's kind of how it started. Him and his 4 children, they started preaching about a different kind of, you know, religion, a religion that was rooted or based in love and on freedom. And so the hippies at that time, that really appealed to them, right? Because if you look at the way the hippies kind of like grew up, you're looking at that whole generation. That generation came from, you know, basically trauma. If you look at that whole, you know, the way they were raised and by their parents. And so if you're looking at it that way, here was a whole generation that was traumatized. And that's, so at the same time they were rebelling against, you know, authority, against, you know, the religious you know, constructs at that time. And they were looking for something different. They were looking for freedom, they were looking for other things. And so when he came out with this, you know, my only religion is love kind of thing, and I want to help spread this message, they all kind of jumped on that bandwagon and said, hey, this is so cool, we're like one big happy family, you know, I feel seen, I feel accepted here, I feel also that, this kind of that it gave their rebellion an outlet, like they channeled their rebellion towards, the system, as we started to call it in the group. And it channeled it more in a way like, okay, we're going to use this rebellion now to help spread God's message of peace and love and, freedom, So this was basically how it started, or this was the intention. And it started in the United States in Huntington Beach. And my parents were also, my dad was a hippie. He was touring India at that time. At that time already, when my dad and my mom joined this group, this cult, they joined it. My mom was fresh out of boarding school, high school. And then my dad was in his early 20s. He was touring India in search of the truth, in search of answers. And the family, as they called it, it was originally known as the Children of God. That's the name that kind of like stuck with us. And then later on, the group, the Children of God, disbanded, and it turned into the Family International, or the Family of Love. And that is kind of where I was born. Yeah. So I was born into it. My parents both joined at a very young age, and they joined with the understanding and the intention of wanting to basically make this world a better place, and rebel against the things that was so rigid, and against the church system at the time, and every all the political things that were going on at the time. And they just wanted to live in freedom and live in love, and this seemed to fit the bill for a lot of those people at the time.
Yeah, that's coming
So
right from source, and that's exactly what, from what I was reading, is it starts off with like kind of like a doomsday beginning, and then it kind of, that's the hook, it's the doomsday, and then come to me, and then from there on it's like brainwashing, and children are raised within it.
Yeah.
And then as a child, you're raised within it. You have no, you just don't know the outside world. You're just within it.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, like your earliest memories, like growing up within it? Like, you were born within?
Yeah, so I was born into this group. So we have like the first generation that had joined it. They were all teenagers or young adults at the time. Some of them were dropouts directly out of high school or college or university. My dad was a dropout of university. My mom just graduated from boarding school, high school, like grade 12. And but some people were even a little bit older than that, but mainly like it was teenagers all the way up until maybe like their 30s or so. So that was like the first generation, we call it. And then so the children that were born from this generation is what we called then the second generation in the group. So I was part of that second generation. I was a little, like, I was kind of in between, in the middle of that generation. I wasn't the first few ones that was born, but I wasn't the last ones either. I was kind of in the middle somewhere. So
with it, is there a hierarchy with that?
This group definitely had a hierarchy, with David Brandberg and his wife being the cult leaders. And so he was married twice. For his first wife, he had 4 kids with her, and then he got married later again to I forget now what her actual real name is, something with Zerby, but her group name was Maria. And yeah, they're definitely, so they were like, call it like the top of the hierarchy, and then came like there were different levels of the cult. So in order to just even be a part of this cult, this group, the one thing that you had to do was you had to be a believer in Jesus and in God, and believe that, you know, basically like the churches do, you know, he came and he died for your sins and that kind of stuff. And you also had to believe that the cult leader David Brandberg was God's anointed prophet, and that he was passing on God's truth and God's word. And then also, in order to show your support, you had to pay your 10% tithe. Now, for those who don't know what tithe is, this is a very common thing in the Christian community. But tithe is, it talks about in the Bible, it's 10% or more of what you earn, of everything that you have, that you give to God. Or, you know, obviously you can't give it physically to God, so you give it to God's representatives, you know, as support to them.
And that was
So,
a way to fund the cult.
Yeah, or to fund them, because they basically lived by faith. They didn't have a job. Their job was to like pastor you and lead you and all that. So the 10% went to them, and anything that they decided was for the benefit of the group, like whether it went to publishing, you know, publications that, you know, they wrote of, or other, you know, other tools or things that we used in the cult for everyone. That also
So
went
really,
to
you
that,
had no,
and other things, but those are what we're told.
you had no
That-
power. You had no power of your, like, no autonomy, right? Like everything that you.
Yeah. So basically, like I was saying, so they were the top, and then there was like under them was the next like hierarchy, which was like the leadership. You know, they directly had contact with the cult leaders, and, you know, the cult leader passed down, you know, the information or guidance and direction for the leadership to you know, help carry out. And the first group, there were 2 or 3. It first started with 2, and then it turned into 3 different levels of participation that you could be in. So the first level was complete and total, like 100% giving of everything of yourself, like your time, your energies, your resources. You were in it full time. You didn't have an outside job, like a secular job. You didn't derive any income from anywhere else. You didn't send your kids to public school, but you homeschooled them yourself because you didn't want them to get brainwashed. And so that was like the first. And so everything, all your time, energy, and everything went to furthering the goal of evangelizing people with this message, and being a good culty, right? So, and then the next level, the next level was, you were allowed, you were still part of this group, but for some reason or another, you couldn't give your full time and focus and energies to, you know, being part of this group, and you know, helping to forward its beliefs. but you still wanted, you wanted the literature, you wanted the publications, you still wanted to all the benefits that came from being part of this. Say, for example, if you had like major health issues or something like that, and you left because you needed a different kind of care, and you couldn't afford to live like in a community or something like that, or if for some reason you couldn't homeschool your kids, and so you had to send them to public school for some reason. This was very frowned upon. It was not encouraged, but for some people, they had to do that. And so then if you did that, you weren't a full-time member, you were a part-time member. But you still got some of the other benefits. You just didn't live, you just didn't give everything. Like maybe you had a part-time job, so you part-time evangelized, and then you had your job or something like that. Or your kids went to public school, but you still kept you still didn't have a job, and you still participated as much as you could, helping to evangelize the world. So that was like the part-time members, which my parents and I and my family, my siblings, we all started off with the full-time. That's where we were. And then after about 6 or 7 years, from what I understand, I may not be 100% right about this, but I was told that my parents, namely my dad, had a very challenging personality, and he was asked to leave the full-time membership because he couldn't get along with a lot of the members. So he was asked to step down into the part-time membership. So some of the time we lived on our own, and while we were in this part-time membership, I actually went to public school instead of continued being homeschooled. And
sounds very structured, like very much the same as like Mormonism, in the lines of Mormonism, or even Scientology with, I guess what they call the Sea Org are the people who have nothing and do nothing but evangelize, and they're like 100%ers for the organization.
Yeah. So, so what life for me as a child growing up in this like full-time, as a full-time member in the group, my earliest memories kind of go back and forth between being in a group with a bunch of other kids my age, being taught or homeschooled, or being in the care of other people that weren't my parents, but that we called aunties or uncles. And they basically took care of us during the day. It's almost like you could relate it to day school, when your parents, they drop off your kid, you're in this day school, and like they have your whole like day planned out. This is what you're gonna learn today. These are your meals, blah blah blah, and then mom and dad come pick you up at the end of the day. That's basically what I remember being in this group like as a child growing up. And then the other part of it that I remember was doing a lot of busking and street singing, where we kind of all got dressed. My sister and I were always dressed up matching because we were like close in age, and then my brothers were all, my mom tried to dress them up all matching in matching outfits. So I come from a family of 10 kids, and funny enough, my mom like swore to herself that she would never have any kids, but then she ended up having 10. But that's a different story. But yeah, I remember doing a lot of busking, doing a lot of singing. We sang songs about the end time and how we're living in, tribulous times are going to come, and we got to prepare, like the doomsday message kind of thing. Or they were songs about, giving and love and happiness and those kind of things. So
that was it, right? Like for the cult life, it was like busking and then art, like drawing or something, like selling art, busking.
Oh
Like,
yeah, we didn't draw. We didn't personally draw. Like that wasn't really encouraged. But
okay,
it was like those were the pamphlets that we used. A, to spread the message, and B, if we could get a little donation for them, all the better. You know.
better.
So the posters, like we sold posters. They were big, like colorful posters with a big message on the back.
Right.
And they were all on different topics. Some were like on, oh, are you lonely, or are you in search of a meaning for to life, or something like that, or are you troubled by what is going on in the world and the
So,
way
like,
it's headed, and all the
vulnerability.
evil things happening in the world, or
Right.
some sort of message. Like anyone who has a Christian friend or who has anybody in the church would know what I'm talking about. Because all these messages are kind of very similar to other Christian denominations.
Yep.
But yeah,
it's
so
Very,
we
very Pentecostal feel to it. When I saw your guys, how you guys lived, it felt very, very Pentecostal. Just with
yeah,
the singing and the um, just the way the music was always Christianized music or evangelized music. It was nothing secular. It was all very with kind of within a silo almost. Like you're kind of kept in a box.
yeah.
But to the outside world, it doesn't look like anything's wrong. It looks all and it does. It does look
It
happy
looks
go
all
lucky.
happy and like, wow, this is great,
So
and initially, it is, because I mean, leave aside the whole cult thing, like living in a community with people that you get along with, and you share,
yes,
you share beliefs, you share the same mindset and the perspective on the world. It's wonderful growing up in an environment like that, where you guys can help each other, where you can support each other, and you can share resources and pool your resources. It's a wonderful thing, right?
so you described something that does sound pretty wonderful, right? Like a good community. And what's the bad about it?
What's the
And
bad?
Pamphlets. I got something here.
can we okay. Oh wow. So these are the kind of the posters?
So that
Not so much for the public. I don't think these
yeah,
are
that one
members.
wasn't so much for the public. Like there were things that were for the public. There were publications and literature for the public, and then there were publications for us, for the members.
Yeah.
Where like
comics.
like I was saying, so David Brandberg was God's prophet, and
Right.
so God would speak to him and give him like dreams and other insight
Right.
into interpretations of the Bible, or the way we should be living, things we should be doing, and he would basically publicize these, and and have every member read them and put them into practice, basically,
And
whatever it
this
is. Some
Nothing
things
to do
were
with propaganda,
some
brainwashing. Yeah.
this will go back to your tithing as well. If you couldn't afford it, you'd be doing what this is, right? The You're second generation, so you weren't in the generation of the flirty fishing craze.
yeah. So for those who don't know what flirty fishing is, flirty fishing was practiced in the group while it was still called the Children of God, I believe. And it was basically a way of reeling in people, influential people who could support our, who could support us and our goals. And a lot of the targets were rich men. And so David Brandberg said that these men, they might be rich and have it all together from the outside, but inside they're all lonely, they're all searching for the same thing, and we could share God's love with them if and the answers with them if it came packaged in a way that they couldn't turn it down, right? That would be more like something they would receive. So he advised the women, whether they were single or married, like, we should target these guys, these rich influential men. Our women should dress up, make themselves look sexy and attractive, and they should go hang out at bars and casinos and places like that, where where these people hang out, and kind of like reel them in, like use your feminine abilities to kind of reel them in, and show them God's love. And by that he meant, like, go as far as you need to, like even as far as having sex with them, having their babies, or whatever it is, to kind of get them hooked onto the message, so that they will drop out and join us, or if they don't want to join us, they can support us financially. So that is what I understand was the goal behind it.
And
So
you and your generation avoided this part.
yeah, we luckily were too young to participate in this. At least I was, but I wasn't that young to where it went by unnoticed to me. So my mom was a part of this, and I remember there were lots of evenings, and I wasn't filled in at all. I was like 6 or 7 years old when I saw my mom doing this. So she would dress up all nice, and my mom never dressed up. She never wore, fancy dresses or high heels or makeup or anything like that. So she would dress up at night, and she would go out with all the other women that were in the group, where we didn't know. And but sometime in the middle of the night or early morning hours, they would come back, and then the next day would just continue business as usual. They would wake up at the same time everybody else did, and we would have our morning devotional reading and all that, and then go on with our day. And I never kind of got clued into what was happening, but that's what was happening. And
that was mostly for the financial aspect. Like if
I think it was for both.
Either way, it was like you get a member or you get child support.
Yeah, you either get a member or you get financial support. But one of those, like, this is basically something that they wanted, the leadership and the cult leader wanted us to tap into. And this was what he thought was the best way to tap into it.
So at what point did it move from that to this?
So I think there were, that was also happening around that time. So remember I said there was like the first generation, and then there was the second generation. So the oldest second generation children, they were the ones that kind of got some of these, where it's talking about child brides. They were basically saying, oh, by the time you are 12 years old, you're basically an adult. You should be taking on adult responsibilities, adult duties, and, you should be able to almost take the full weight or responsibility of adults in some cases. And so, getting married at a very young age was one of those things. Now, I don't know too much about it because I was too young to know about some of these. And so also what happened on a regular basis was publication purging. So as these publications came out for, the members to read and, kind of digest and put into practice, it also got a lot of publicity in mainstream media and other things that were going on. So regularly we got notified that, hey, you know what, maybe we should purge some of these publications or get rid of them, you know, burn them or shred them. And I remember a few times we were told exactly what to purge. You know, like they're like, okay, then go through this book and this publication on page number 5. There's a woman that, you know, is naked. Now draw some clothes on her, you know, with a black marker. And then go to the next publication, which was titled da 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 da. There is a picture on this side where there is a girl standing nude in front of an adult. Now put some clothes on her. Or, you know, X out some of the, you know, the speech bubbles or whatever. So a lot of these publications got purged before I actually had the chance to fully read them and understand it. But and
So in a
like I said,
sense, you got lucky from the grooming days.
I got lucky. I did.
What about the David Ito books? Weren't those still in circulation while you were?
Those were in circulation, yeah. So David Ito was basically, there were 3 children that David Brandberg lived with that were kind of like his children, or that he kind of taught and took care of like his children. And a lot of like the kids' publications were also based on his interactions and his daily life with them. Now, Davidito was his adopted son, so it was actually his wife's son, so his stepson, from, I believe it was a result of the flirty fishing that his wife was doing, and she got pregnant from somebody, but he basically adopted this kid as his own, Davidito. And then there was Techi and Davida, 2 other girls that were also living in the same home or in the same, you know, living quarters as Davidito was. And there are a lot of publications on them, like a lot of the kids' books that we read growing up were based on the life and basically the daily life of Davida, Davidito, and Techi. And David Brandsburg interaction with them, teaching them different things, helping them to understand different things. Basically, like they were illustrations of how they were parented or how they were groomed. And then we read them, and from us reading them, we kind of took on that same, you know, brainwashing, parenting, grooming, you know, all of the above.
This is normal. Don't worry about it. This is how you raise your child. It's just grooming from the start.
And I think our parents just saw it as like, yeah, this is just like reading a book on parenting, you know. So
I wonder if this is one of those very fine lines, like one of those really rare fine lines where it's like one of those things. Do you blame the pedophile? Not the one, you know what I mean? Like if you were just, that's that very fine line where they were just raised into it, where it's common knowledge. Like that's got to be a very slippery slope for some people, right? Because not only like is something like this going to attract the ones who like really want to do it and are just shitty people, and then it's going to interbleed them with the people who don't know any better. And it's just how do people who are survivors even today, who are from generation 1, how are they coping with, like, as in modern times, like we are putting a big step against this. So like, how is that? I mean, I know you haven't been there in a long time, but I know you are tied to some people who are still participants. How is this molding things today for even the psyche of the people who have left?
Well, I think the internet definitely probably changed things.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure. I think it was very hard from what I understand and from what I've seen in ex, TFI members. Sorry, TFI stands for the Children of, the Family International. That's what we last kind of were called, or the family. I think before this whole awareness of mental health and, people actually having to heal from things started happening, I think healing before that, this awareness and this awakening, it was pretty difficult. And I think most of them didn't really know how to cope with it. And I think they kind of labeled themselves as I'm broken. I'm not able to be helped or fixed or whatever. There were quite a few of them that checked themselves into psych wards, or that basically went crazy because they just couldn't
handle the horrifics of that whole environment. Yeah.
Not just that, but they also couldn't handle transitioning then from being in the cult to then also being outside of the cult and seeing themselves as their own identity without the cult, so everything, because we all know now that your childhood, what we call childhood trauma, shapes basically the way you view the world, the way you view yourself, all your fears and insecurities, the way you think you are, like that's just who I am. That could even not be who you are, but just who you became because of how you were molded, right? And then the coping mechanisms you took on as a result of trauma.
So it's got to be extremely hard to find out your entire life was a lie. Like I could 100% see the impact of that. Like that's a veil being unraveled in its own, right?
It definitely makes you question everything. Life, God, the cosmos, why you're even here, why you're alive.
It makes you stay present, though.
Yes, but it is a good thing, because at least you're throwing out. Even if you're throwing out everything, you're basically wiping, like knocking down everything, the entire house you built, and you're getting back to the foundation, like rock bottom. And so from there you can build something that's actually solid and stable. Then
it's beautiful. The more I hear people say what you just said, it doesn't cease to amaze me. Me and Brandon have had this discussion multiple times on multiple different occasions regarding, like you said, it's the childhood trauma. Everything is triggered by trauma. And it seems like, and again, you've used the word awakening, right? Like awakening somehow seems tied to trauma. And the biggest part is dropping your pride and shedding off, even as painful as it is, for that manifestation to come forward for you to move on. It just, everything seems like it's
gotta let go.
That's where everything seems to converge, let going. So I guess when you say awaken, like how are you healing now, progressing from on the upward swing of that lifestyle? Like how do you process that my life has been a lie? I wasn't given a proper education. Like how does somebody pick up the pieces once they're awake and move forward? Like, because that's a rough life in its own, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how other people have done it. It's definitely a very personal journey, and what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another person. But it definitely took me a while to come around to where I could even see that I was living in a cult. I was living in a controlled environment that was not good for me mentally, emotionally, or spiritually.
When did that?
Sorry?
When did you realize that like things aren't normal in this?
So I first started realizing that we were being raised differently from other kids out in society when my parents were asked to leave the, full-time membership and they became part-time members, because my parents had, I believe at that time already, they had 6 or 7 kids, all like under the age of 7, 7 or 8. And so we, myself, along with my siblings, we started going to public school. My parents enrolled us in public school because they're like, you know what, this whole homeschool thing is just too stressful. My mom was a full-time mom, but she was handling 6 or 7 kids, like all boom, 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 one after the other. And she herself was not taught anything about parenting, or like she was just she was fresh out of boarding school when she joined the cult, and then a year later, actually, she got pregnant, and then roughly a year, 9 months after that, she had me, and then not even 2 years after that, she had my sister. Like, she had kids one after the other, and I feel she was just trying to juggle everything and handle everything. She tried to do the best she could, but it was just too much for her to like follow all the rules and the regulations and everything that, a good culty member should be doing. So I think it was a real relief for both my parents when they were able to put us in public school, and
Right.
because I guess they figured, well, the pros outweigh the cons right now. Like, how bad can public school be, especially like in the earlier, like in grade school, they basically just teach you reading and math and science and those kind of things, and those are all good. The school will do it better than we can right now. So that was the first time where I became aware that we were being raised differently, because even though now I went to public school, I found out that most kids hadn't been homeschooled. It wasn't normal for them to be nomads or vagabonds, like traveling around every year here and there. And by that, I don't mean just even like cities, like whole continents. I counted up once how many times I had moved countries or continents in the first 7 years of my life. And I believe I had moved 5 times in the first 7 years, from India to Germany to Nepal to, like, it was normal. It was normal for us to be moving every year or every 2 years, just to be uprooting everything. And, what we called forsaking all, like that means basically give all your shit away and pack everything so that it fits into a suitcase, and then start again wherever you happen to, like, be assigned to or go to next, wherever God sent you next.
Why
And
is
that
that?
was
Why did they bounce you around too much? Was it just to kind of keep everything on the down low, or was there spots that needed to be filled? Like, what was the
I
purpose?
exactly sure why my parents moved so much. I think one of the reasons is because my dad was from Germany and my mom was from India. So my dad had joined this cult in India. That's where he met them. And but then I think maybe because of his like personality, I think my dad has undiagnosed Asperger's. And I can recognize the signs because one of my kids has Asperger's too, and I only kind of like made the connection after I saw it in my son, and my son got diagnosed with it. Anyways, whoever has a child that is on the spectrum or that has Asperger's, they'll know that they have a very hard time adjusting socially or getting along with other people, especially like in a community setting. There are these people that like to be alone, they don't like to be bothered. They just can't handle that. And so maybe that was one of the reasons why my parents always went back and forth, like a lot, between Germany and India.
So very like personal for yourself, like probably like the moving was probably like there was conflict within the group that your dad was.
Maybe I think so. That part of that was the reason.
Okay.
And maybe the other reasons were just to like raise more financial support. Like this was what would happen too sometimes. You know, you'd go to the what they call the mission field, which was usually like a third world country or something like that, to like evangelize the world, spread the gospel to, you know, all the heathens. and then you go back to the first world country to raise funds and support to continue, you know, your project or your mission back in the third world country. So I think that is also kind of part of what happened, because my dad was German, so he had that ability to go back there, raise a bunch of money. Like we did that through a lot of we did that through busking, singing, going night singing in restaurants and stuff, not as kids, but like the adults would, or they would sell like we made different promotional items, I guess, or things that we would sell that also helped to spread the message. We not like my parents personally, but as the cult grew and became more organized and professional, we actually had departments that were in charge of making the promotional items, making the inspirational and tools and the literature to give to or to sell to people. So we made our own music. Then we had cassette tapes to sell. Then afterwards, it turned to CDs, and you know, as you know,
Right. To make some money, you guys.
Right, to make some money. And then we had things like motivational desktop calendars, or what else did we have? Those were two of the main things. Books or some different publications for kids, you know, storybooks with good moral values, other things like that. So, and then we would take those and go to the first world countries and sell them there, right? Because it'd make more money there than, like, you know, obviously the dollar is worth more than the Indian rupee is. So we'd make money there, and then we'd bring it all back and we'd hand it over to, you know, the community or the group that we were living with, and say, oh, here's the money, here's what I gained, and like, oh yeah, good job, brother. Okay, it's going to a good cause. And then we'd be back, we'd have a little bit more money to support some of the projects that we were working on in the third world country. And yeah, that's kind of like, I think, a combination of a few of those things.
Okay.
That's
so
why
like the
we
living
constantly uprooted so many times. But for me, that was normal. But then when I went back to Germany to settle down, like with my parents, because by that time they already had so many kids and we couldn't just keep affording to up and leave all the time. They put us into school, and then so I stayed in school for 10 years. And yeah, so that during that time I realized that a lot of the ways that I was raised, or the things that we were taught, like having morning devotions, was like, what will you do, what, like you know, or you know, sometimes my parents would encourage me to spread the end time message with my classmates, you know. And so then I'd invite them home and we'd watch something about the end time, you know, like the end of days is coming, be prepared. This is how you can get prepared, you know, basically ask Jesus into your heart and make a personal connection with him, and start preparing yourself, you know, spiritually, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And my classmates were like, they didn't really know what to think of it.
It's hard to integrate. It's hard to integrate into society when there was brainwashing. Like,
yeah,
that would be difficult. If I can just recap just a little bit and give Usha a little bit of a break. Like that is an incredible amount of information and story that you have expressed there. Some famous people that that were a part of the cult, the Children of God, like Joaquin Phoenix,
Mhm.
Roseanne, Rosie McCowan. There's Ricky Rodriguez. That's the David Tito, right? Is that the
Yeah,
David Tito, Ricky
yeah,
Rodriguez? So,
yeah. Even I believe what's his name? Former Fleetwood Mac
the singer of Mac?
member. Yeah,
Yes.
Jeremy Spencer, the
Jeremy.
slide guitarist
So
of the Fleetwood Mac group.
they would be considered first generation Phoenix, or
Yeah.
like
What's it called? Davidito obviously wasn't. He would be second generation, as would was it River Phoenix? I think he was also
River Phoenix. Yeah.
part of the second generation. I could be wrong on this, but people like Jeremy Spencer, who like left the Fleetwood Mac group, that he would be considered first generation.
First. Okay. And from the practices of abuse, well, they're happening to this day. Am I wrong on that? Like, there's still abuse happening with the cult.
I'm pretty sure. Like I haven't been in touch really with the going ons of the group since I left. Really, like I've been in touch with some of the members that still were a part of the group, but those are not some of the things we talk about anymore. Like we just try and stick to things that we have in common.
I see.
But from my knowledge and understanding is that the group still exists. I don't know if some of their practices have been toned down or just stopped. I am not sure about that. But just because like there you don't have to be in a cult to be abused, right? And I think that is probably I think that is the thing that we could take away from this also, is that even if you're not in a cult, like that doesn't mean that you're not suffering from some form of either emotional, spiritual, or physical abuse, and
It's very brave that you said that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. And yeah, the abuse happens everywhere with children, and especially with the brainwashing and stuff with the cult, Children of God. There's a sense of almost indoctrinating children, though, and keeping that into the line of the cult. How the experiences that you had during it, so you definitely, you can turn away the question. You feel comfortable however you want. This is your power. Did you experience like the abuse within that environment? Was there witnessed of abuse within the cult in that environment?
I definitely experienced some of the abuse. Not specifically the abuse that happened during the flirty fishing or like the child bride's time, but definitely after that, there were other policies or other, I guess, policies or new revelations that our founder, became enlightened on and encouraged us to practice. And those did pertain to, our sexuality as well.
So, like as a female, did you guys have any power within the cult, really, other than just being objects of sexuality?
I mean, it's I don't think it's a yes or no
Mm.
question, because and that is the hardest thing when you are brainwashed, or when you are basically groomed into a certain kind of behavior or a certain way of thinking. But within us, there is still this little, guide, this little thing called, your intuition, that cannot be groomed, and it cannot, be brainwashed.
Mm.
And we all feel that we can't always, like, we don't always know exactly what it is, or that something, or what is wrong. We just know that something doesn't feel right.
So, did you
And
have the power to change it?
no matter how much we're brainwashed into something, or guilted into something, that we can't ignore that. But I believe in these types of situations, we feel like we don't really have a choice, because we, like in this case with me, there were, after the flirty fishing was, stopped, there was a new revelation that David Brandberg encouraged us to live and practice, which was called the law of love. And basically the concept of this was sharing God's love with those around you that you were living with, and that, that needed it in ways that was kind of radical to mainstream media. So he, in the Bible, there are examples or parables that Jesus was talking about. He was telling people, like, hey, share of your material possessions. If you're, if you have two coats, and your, fellow that you meet on the road has none, and he's freezing his butt off, lend him one of your coats. Or if, somebody comes to you and he's thirsty, and you have water to drink, give him some water to drink. Now those are like almost moral, good principles to live by. But David Brandberg took this to a whole nother level, where he basically said this would not just go for your material possessions and, your belongings, but your own body as well. Your body, your mind, your, everything.
Right.
And so this was like, if a brother, or a sister has a need, or basically a sexual need, because we had different policies in our group that didn't allow us to interact or have intimate relationships with people outside of the group, or even between levels of the group. And so there were also a lot of lonely people. So he was like, well, what do we do about all these lonely people in our group? So he was like, well, here's the solution. With that example that Jesus gave in the Bible, we'll just, put that into practice all the way, and not just limit it to our physical possessions, but we'll limit it to, we won't put any limits on it. Right. So, hey, if this, if Peter here has a, is frustrated and has a sexual need, and you as a woman can help him, maybe you should consider it. Whether you're single or married, that doesn't matter, as long as all the parties involved are consenting. Now, that's where a big problem comes into play, because consenting consenting partners now, just because somebody says yes to something doesn't mean they want to say yes to it. Doesn't mean it doesn't really mean they're consenting,
Means
right?
they're
Especially
mandated
if it's
to.
an environment where you were brainwashed into thinking you should consent or you need to consent, or if you were raised in an environment where you feel that if you said no to something, the consequences would be more what's the word I'm looking for?
The fear is
They
like,
would be worse than saying no, right?
right.
And
Yeah.
so that was, I believe, one of the biggest problems with this whole law of love. Now, David Brandberg never made it mandatory. He never made it like a hard and fast rule, like that this is what you should do every time someone asks you to for like a sexual favor.
Do you guys want to take a 5-minute break?
Sorry.
Oh, don't
I'm
be
good.
sorry. Don't be sorry.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Take a break?
if you guys want to take a little bit of a breather, I'm good. I'm good in either way. This has been
I'm good.
for myself. This has been very eye opening. So, oh, we lost Troy. That's it.
I'm still here. I'm just doing some stuff in the background.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I'm gonna be off camera for a few.
Don't worry. Don't worry. We'll just chat away.
Yeah.
We'll just
So
take a little bit of a break too. You know, like I know our time is pretty valuable. This has been a lot. How are you doing? How are you doing?
me? I'm doing okay, actually.
Good.
You know, it's not triggering these things. Talking about these things are not triggering me anymore, but they used to be very triggering for me.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So,
Yes.
and yeah, so like I said, a lot of these things, this living the law of love wasn't made mandatory, and it's not like you got, punished. There was a punishment for, turning, any one of these things down, but the way that the environment was so that you felt really, really guilty if you said no to this,
No.
because it made you feel that you are not just
You're letting down.
disrespecting authority, but you're also going against God and something that God wanted you to do. Like, you basically have this fear of God, that God is going to punish you and that you're going to be seen as selfish and inconsiderate and proud and all those things that really, in this organization, you didn't want to be seen as that person. Like, that was worse than, doing the deed and getting it over with.
Absolutely. And it comes from like years of grooming as a child. So like losing touch of like your family, like that's the punishment, is letting down, I guess. Like from what you're saying, this is how I'm thinking it. It's like you're almost like, if you don't do this, it's like viewed upon like you'll be kicked out of the pack. And that's almost like scarier than actually not doing the deed.
Yeah.
It's very,
And I think a lot of like, you don't have to necessarily be in a cult in order to understand this. Like, it is everywhere. Like, it could be something in the workplace where you feel guilted into doing something, or it could be anything at home.
yeah. My
It's
words, the law.
where you feel that, yes, there is no like it's not a hard and fast rule, and nobody said you had to do anything, but you are just made to feel so guilty if you are going to turn down something, or actually consider yourself and your own well-being before the needs of others, or anything, like you hear a lot in the workplace where some people, they give over and above what they should be giving, to a workplace that pays you minimum wage.
Yeah.
And but they feel guilty if they actually just did the bare minimum and just did what they were paid to do, not any bit more,
Yeah,
and
it's like a tied on an emotional control or something. Like there's a tie on there. So you
yeah,
gotta
there is a tie in like how you are going to be perceived then, but also how you perceive yourself. Like, what kind of person does that make me then if I actually,
stand up for yourself.
stand up for myself? Yeah.
That must
So,
have been
and I think this can happen anywhere. Like, yes, this happened to, me in the cult. And this was obviously a more, um, uh, out of the ordinary, situation. But this concept happens anywhere and everywhere, you know.
Can we talk about the breakaway
Mhm.
bit? Like, what was the moment, that you kind of just like left? Was it early childhood, like when you started doing the public schooling, and then was it your parents that kind of left the cult, or was it yourself that?
So, actually, funny that you mention it because my parents actually left the cult about 10 years before I did. And they, well, the reason I questioned why they left was because I was just like, I was just asking him, are you sure that, you're doing the right thing, leaving? Like, this is, you gave your life to this, this was more than just, oh, a group that I'm a part of. This was your life. This was your belief. This was, everything that you were living for, and, but I think after a while, because they had been living on their own for a bit, because like I said, they weren't really a full-time member anymore. So it allowed them to pull back more and to see things from a distance, and kind of see the whole forest, which then led them to see that, later on, what I also saw was that we actually were a cult. And even though there were quite a few good things that came about as a result of being part of this, group, there were also detrimental things.
Yeah.
And so they were actually the ones that left first. But I still stayed in it. Number one, I think because of my distorted sense of self-worth. And when you have such low self-worth and self-esteem, I almost feel that your ego kind of gets bumped up quite a few notches higher as a result to try and make up for that lack of self-worth and self-esteem and belief in yourself.
I'm so
And
glad
so
because like I believe that too. Like it's like insecure, self-worth, ego is
yeah,
loud, right? And a lot of people, with that like loud ego, it's like an insecurity, it's a self-worth thing. So you
yeah,
found yourself to a point where you were still staying within it because of the self-worth. What got
yeah,
what
I
got you to
think so.
the point where you were just like, you know what, I'm taking the jump, man. I'm leaving. I'm leaving. Dude, it was
There were a few times while I was still in it where I questioned, myself. I'm like, is this really something that I still want? Like I'm starting to see different aspects of this group that I really don't believe is the 100% truth, or that I don't really resonate with, or this
Mm,
is not what I joined this group for.
mm,
Like my parents were um, part-time members, and then when I turned 17, I kind of joined as a full-time member again.
mm.
So I was like all in it. And it was something that I felt I had to do in order to prove myself to myself.
I see.
That was one thing. And the other thing was
What your parents did.
when I was 16, I had a personal experience that I was like, I had a near drowning incident when my family and I went to the North Sea for a bit. And yeah, like I was about to drown and I knew it. And I had been going through this time where I was questioning the existence of God, and if there even was a God, and what the whole point of life was, and purpose, and everything like that, right? But basically, I was questioning God, wondering if there even really was a God, or if, everything was just left up to us. And I kind of put God on the spot, and I said, I basically shot up a prayer while I was like swallowing water and going under. I'm like, okay, God, this is your chance now. If you exist and you're real and you're alive, you're going to get me out of this. You're going to save my life. And if you save my life, I am going to serve you for the rest of my life with my life.
Mm,
That's what I'm going to owe you as a result of saving me, because it proves two things. Well, it proves, first of all, that there is a God, that he exists, or it exists, and that it cares about each one of us individually.
mm.
And then that would give me a purpose to live for, right? So, short end of the story is I did get saved by an angel that disappeared in front of my eyes the moment he saved me. After I was out of the water and saved, he disappeared in front of my eyes. Never saw him again. But so the only way I knew how to give my life in service to God to the highest degree at that time in my mind was, great, I'll just join as a full-time member and be all in. So that is what I did. And that was also one thing that kept me in that group also for as long as it did.
So you stayed in until you were late 20s?
Sorry, I can't hear
Sorry, late
what
20s.
it's
Late
very
20s.
distorted.
You stayed into the cult. When did you get out of the cult? Like late 20s?
Sorry, I I still can't hear you now.
He
It's
was
sounding
asking.
very, very distorted.
He was asking when you got out of the cult. What around time frame? Your late 20s, around then?
When I got out of the cult.
Yeah.
So I left the cult when I believe I was 30 years old when I left the cult. And it was myself, my then husband, and 5 kids. So it wasn't intentional. We didn't intentionally decide, okay, we're going to leave this group. But what we did decide at that time, we were both in India, and members were allowed to, with the approval of leadership, to open up their own commune, or their own little community under the umbrella of the structure, right? The cult's leadership. And so we had seen that the people that had started their own community had a little bit more say in how policy got played out. You know, like you had a little bit more leeway to act according to your own faith and to interpret some things the way you felt that the way you felt that it should be interpreted, as long as it stayed still under the the guidelines and the rules of leadership and all that. So we planned actually to open our own little commune with some of the members that we personally resonated with more and felt supported by. But in order to do this, we wanted to go about it a little bit more organized and a little bit more professional. So the way our day-to-day life and our budget and expenses were managed was that as a community, like each community was responsible for their own, group of people that they lived with. And so, for example, if rent was due on the 1st of every month, not everybody, but most people were responsible to somehow bring in those finances so that the bills and expenses and everything would be covered when the time came. So that meant, because we weren't allowed to have secular jobs as a full-time member, but you could go and be a glorified beggar and sell cassette tapes and desktop calendars on street while you are preaching the gospel and telling other people about Jesus. So but we didn't really want to do that anymore. My husband and I, we were like, that's just not for us. I don't want to be like hitting the pavement every morning worrying about where my next meal is going to come from for the kids, or and I want to be able to educate them. I want to provide a better education for them than the little homeschooling setup that we could afford at the time, and other things like that. So we were like, okay, you know what, here's what we're going to do. We're going to open up an official charity, because my husband at the time, he was Canadian, and so he's like, if we open up a Canadian charity or a Canadian organization, and then we are living abroad doing this charitable work with our children, one thing that would enable us is for us to be receiving child support from the government through this means. That means that at least their needs and food and shelter for them and everything would be taken care of, and then that would alleviate some of a lot of the financial responsibilities, because money in Canada, Canadian money goes much farther in India than it does here in Canada. So that was kind of like what him and I were thinking. So we went back to Canada and we estimated, okay, we need to get a lot of paperwork done. We need to get, the kids' citizenships, taken care of and all that kind of stuff. So we estimated 6 months to a year max that we were, going to have to work all this out. And then we would go back to India and open up our own community with at least, a few more resources. That was our idea. But as the universe had it, that was just like I guess that was just the first step. I think it was just the universe's first step to get us physically out of the cult, for us to be able to step back and see the cult for what it really was and for what it was doing to us, So it all took a lot longer than we had expected. 6 months kind of turned to a year. And we were then having to consider now, do we still take our return, flight back, which we had booked at the beginning, or do we say bye-bye and trust the universe for what is going to happen next? Because by that time, I couldn't homeschool my, 5 kids anymore. I was like juggling too many balls. So we decided we put them in public school, so that was their first experience with life outside of the cult. And for me, I'm like, well, this is not that bad after all. They're able to do a better job than I did juggling all 5 different grades, because my kids were all in a different grade each, and I was trying to homeschool them, plus manage the household and the cooking and everything. So sorry, just lost my train of
Oh
thought.
my God. Oh my God.
And
Please. Okay.
and so because of that, like while we were gone, while we were in Canada, yes, there were other communities in Canada that were also part of the group, but we didn't really know them personally, so we didn't have as much contact with the group during the time that we were here in Canada. So what that did for us is that it actually helped us to make friends outside of the cult, and through making friends outside of the cult, get a different perspective, on how we were living our life and how it was influencing our mindsets and our our perspectives on the world and people and us and everything, right? So that was kind of the turning point to where we were slowly, like over the year, we were changing, we were adjusting our perspectives, or having a whole 360 in some areas. And to the point where then when everything was closed up, or at least some of the legal work was done, we were like, I don't know, I guess we're not going back.
Incredibly difficult experience, I would say.
For sure. So I was telling Troy this when we met, when we left the cult and we stopped giving our 10% towards the cult. Like basically we cut off more or less every contact with them. We stopped reading publications and everything like that. I went through an identity crisis, which was like, because this was my family, it was everything, right? It was my life, it was my identity. And then not having that anymore, not being part of that, not having a supportive, what I call at that time, it was like my support group, my community, it was more than just a community. It was
Plus, you were
part of me.
Mother of 5 children. Your mother.
Yes.
5 children, lost your identity, no support.
Oh, we also had no money either. Yeah. And I went through an identity crisis, and I don't know how my husband had handled it. If he went through a crisis, he didn't let that on too much, but I was like I was just a wastebasket. Like I was just in a pool of tears half the time. Like I remember going through like 2 weeks where I was just woke up and just started crying and just crying some more. And then I couldn't and I would put on like a smile for the kids when they would get up and pretend like I was totally fine. Then when they went off to school, again, I'm crying and I'm trying to kind of like figure out like, what do I do? What is wrong with me? I didn't even know it was an identity crisis. That's how naive that we were. I didn't even know what was happening. So that's also when I started searching out other writers and like reading other books other than our cult's publications. So I got got really interested in any kind of books on philosophy and just books on psychology and anything that had to do with growth and identity and awarenesses and healing and everything, the journey of life.
Can I ask you, how many years has it been now that you have been like kind of just on that journey from leaving and now where you're at right now? And where are you at right now? Like, how are you feeling today?
So it's been since the time we up and left. It has been 15 or 16 years. Let me see. 15 years. It's been 15 years.
And how are you with the journey so far? Like with yourself, like how are you?
Yeah. The journey definitely was the hardest thing ever, because the journey, or basically leaving the cult, brought with it a dismantlement of everything. Not just my own personal identity, but everything that came with my own personal life. My family, my marriage, my relationship, my friends, everything went through basically a complete, it went on a roller coaster ride, quite a few scary ones that I didn't know if I was even going to get through it.
Five children,
yeah, well, while trying to, trying to keep it together.
It's been 15 years and you've gotten to this point.
Sorry?
And it's been 15 years and you're here today. Like incredible. Like, what are some of the tools, like just briefly, what are some of the things that you just naturally instinctively went to kind of get through?
I went to journaling. That was my instinctive, go-to, because even though we didn't call it journaling in the cult, we did what we called receiving prophecy. So what that was in the cult was that you would just get quiet, and if you had like a question or something that you needed answers for, you would take your problem basically to God. You would tell God about your problem, and then you would wait for him to give you his guidance, his divine guidance, his wisdom, his insight, right? And help you navigate the problem or the challenge. And so what it basically was listening to your inner voice. But at that time, my inner voice was kind of distorted because of the trauma and the brainwashing that happened as a result. So my receiving or my listening to my inner voice wasn't 100% correct. But that was the first thing I turned to. In the meantime, like since then, I have learned to recognize a little bit more when my receiving, when what the guidance I'm getting is a little bit off or is being tainted by my trauma or my pain or my inability to see something clearly because of, my ego or whatever.
So incredible to get to that point.
You've mentioned a lot of common words that come up with a lot of the conversations we've had with people going through, call it what you will, a spiritual awakening, a breakaway, whatever. And the common words are, you mentioned how the ego must be a thing that needs to be forgotten about, the trauma, intuition, and here we are talking about receiving. Right? Sounds very new agey. So I guess my question for you now is, as you're on this path to recovery, and I've known you quite some time, you're doing rather well than I would have. Where are you sitting now, being raised so long under the institution of Christianity? Do you still consider yourself a Christian now, or have you, because you had said like, God, I'll, save my life, and your prayers were answered. So do you believe in the traditional Yahweh like you used to, or is that so tarnished that you've had to kind of shift it to a different name or practice or what have you?
Yeah, that is an ongoing journey, and it's actually quite I'm quite enjoying now. It took me a while to get to this point. I'm quite enjoying now, sometimes just not knowing the answer and just waiting, just excited to see when the answer is going to reveal itself, or if the answer even is what anything close to what I think it could be. When it, like, for example, you were asking me about, do I still call myself a Christian, or do I believe in, I believe in a higher power. And I believe that higher power lives and moves through us. And I believe that we co-create with this higher power. And then there are so many other theories that I have between, or anywhere, between this stance and all the new age theories that that exist out there, that we're even like, maybe we're not even, maybe we're partly alien, or maybe we have some kind of like, we were genetically created from whatever, or even how there could be more than one God. Maybe there were many gods, multiple gods, maybe there are multiple gods, and how do we know which one we're following, which one is good, bad, whatever.
This always seems to be part of the awakening, these exact same feelings and questions that you're having right now, which is, for everyone out there who hasn't been cracked yet, wait for it. These are normal things.
But I feel that we are definitely, as a human species, we're not just human. We're called human, but we're definitely, I think, a cross between, a physical human body with, the sensations and the senses that we feel and have, and something divine. And we have yet, I believe, to discover how divinely powerful we are. I don't think that many of us have come close to really realizing,
Just tapping into that realm. Yeah,
just like, I don't know, I go a lot by feelings that I get. It feels like this to me, and it feels like that. Call it, I don't know, intuition, or us women, we go a lot more by how we feel. But my feelings, like, in a lot of things, when it comes to, like, I don't know, even just discerning things in the physical realm, they've always been pretty right on, even if I didn't know exactly like how to respond to it or how to handle it when something just didn't feel right, or when I'm like, I don't know, there's just something about it that just not, there's something about it that's weird, that's making me feel whatever. I don't know.
You have a little bit more of a stronger instinct, I would say, than most. I would say that you're very attuned. You're attuned to environments for sure.
Is there anything positive that you could say that you did take away from the cult, despite how evil it seemed to have been? Is there anything, I mean, I know it was your life, so it's going to be a lot of good memories that you have, but is there anything that you think that you may have been taught that may have been actually beneficial to life, like some of the teachings? Like, I don't know if you guys read straight from the Bible or if you check, because it sounded like earlier when you were talking about how Berg was structuring things, that was a little bit of the Bible. Some of it sounded like the Bible without the dogma and a little bit of New Age sprinkled in to make it look sweet. So, like, were you guys reading out of like the Apocrypha, or were you just kind of keeping it straight to the Bible, or was it just like, here's a little bit of Genesis, here's a little bit of Exodus. Now David Berg gets to draw it up and make it his own thing. Like, was there anything positive?
Kind of like we followed the King James version of the Bible, and because he felt it was the most accurately translated version. But when it came, like, a lot also, he felt a lot was left up to interpretation, and this is where I feel a lot of the different Christian denominations out there, I feel that's why they have so many different kind of, different denominations. Like, you have the Catholics, then you have the Protestants, and then you have the evangelicals, and then you have the Pentecostals, and then you have the Jehovah's Witness, and you have the Seventh-day Adventists, but they all believe in the Bible, but they all have their slightly different, version of, translation and interpretation of the Bible, right? And that's where I felt like our founder, he had his own interpretations of the Bible, and that's why he started this movement, this cult, because his interpretations were a little bit different than, the other mainstream, Christian groups out there. And he, he felt he wanted to, live the Bible out in his own way, in the way he interpreted it, as his own truth.
But is there anything positive you took from there that you brought out with you that you still find have value in life?
I think there's a lot of things that I can take away that have value, just because there were things in the cult that affected me negatively. I think even those negative things can be taken positively, just depending on how you look at it and how you're going to use it. So, like, for example, one of the main things that comes to my mind is we were taught that we are all channels that God can speak through and to, and that God talking to us, or the divine talking to us, wasn't just a thing that was reserved for biblical times, but also something that still happens to this day, that God still speaks. And that is what, I had earlier referred to as like the receivings that we get. And I feel that is one big thing that I took away, and that I still use, although I have changed some things about it, like the way I use it, because it can be used. What am I trying to say here? Give me a sec. Like, depending on where you're at in life and how aware you are of your traumas and how they're playing out in your life and how they're affecting you, you can either receive more clearly and, and see the truth. But sometimes, like, the ego can come in the way, or your fears can come in the way, and then your, the way you see life even is tainted. And then that's also how the receivings can be, when you receive, it can be tainted if you're not aware of how your traumas and your pains are affecting you, causing you to, have a more inflated ego or things like that. But yeah, that is one positive thing that I take away to this day and I still use.
Was that something that's like just resilience? Some of the scriptures probably gave you a lot of resilience getting through a lot of things.
They did. In fact, I need to take a 5-minute break and use the washroom.
Oh my
So
please.
I'm going to get back to you.
No,
Okay.
That's,
As soon as you're done, we'll come back and we'll do our close up wrap up, and we'll be good.
Sure.
that's
Okay.
fantastic.
I'll be right back.
Right up. Well, Brandon, how's that going so far? What do you think so far?
Well, different generations, right? Different generations, different experiences across the world. There's a lot of the grooming is something. Grooming, doomsday, anything like that. What I'm looking at is like you look at nowadays where we're at now, and you see a lot of makeshift communities being built, almost very culty. And I think we've had this conversation before where a lot of these communities are forming where they're just like getting out of society and building their own community. And I think what's dangerous about it, that all sounds good, but what's dangerous about it is where it turns, into grooming and sexualizing children. Yeah.
It's strange that it always comes back to that. That's what I want to know. Everything seems to come back to that exact same thing. But
Well,
what really kind of perked me up is like, even as we were talking about through trauma, everything she had mentioned is everything you and I have discussed. That the key words are there with anybody we've ever talked to going
ego,
through this.
ego was the main one. And Usha said that. What she say about like her self-worth and her insecurities were so high that her ego was so loud, which is quite, I think that's been explained in public, but it's not too much. As a community, we don't really like check in with our people. And when we see that person that's just running around full of what I call ego, um, they're insecure, and it's like, are you okay, man?
Yeah.
Um,
How insecure would that life be for you? You remember the movie from the early 2000s? Have you ever see The Village?
oh yeah, the village. Yes, yes, yes.
They're kept into a society from the wolves or whatever, and then the one girl escapes and she's in modern society. Like, how
Exactly.
much of an allegory is that for this lifestyle?
Night Shyamalan, Shyamalan,
Shyamalan, yeah.
Shyamalan, yeah, the village. It's the same thing. It's hey,
It's
look,
keeping people siloed, right? And at the fear of you're going to lose your family,
yeah.
you're going to lose your community, and the outside world's going to eat you up and spit you out. So you're better under what we have. That sounds it's authoritarianism essentially. It's
Oh, you know,
through manipulation.
from what I've known or studied or did some reading on Children of God. Yeah, Andy Berg like took an opportunity, right? And he wasn't a nice man. He
And
took
the
an
thing
opportunity.
is, a lot of the cult members, the first generation, the ones that would be drawn into it, weren't just vulnerable dummies. That's what blows my mind. Like, some of these people were like doctors, lawyers, like high up there tiered, like critical thinking people.
Mhm.
And it just makes you wonder how even a critical thinker could
Mm.
be drawn into something so nefarious.
Hey, didn't we go through a little bit of a you sent me that German Ballheim about the
Hmm.
Nazi Germany, and then like how he explained that
Issue.
like it was like the how do you do propaganda? How do you brainwash and groom society? Is you just make them all what was it, stupid, like stupider type of thing. So like
Or just
trauma.
not dumb, but dumb through fear. I think you just keep them ignorant, keep their heads buried in the sand, and say it's almost like what totalitarian 1984 predicts, right? Like we're going to give up freedom for security, and you have to listen to me if you want to be kept safe. That's what it all seems to come down to, even with any of these types of organizations, which is terrifying. Like
Power
especially
control.
you and I coming from the military, right? Like you can
Yeah.
remember from like the day you got out, from the first day you're in as a brand new private, right? Like you go jump into a swamp and not second guess it, even if it was the dumbest idea, right? Because you're conditioned through fear, you're conditioned through threat of whatever, and
Yeah.
then you just do, and it
Yeah.
just
Well,
like,
it's amazing what your brain is, man. Like your brain is a computer, I think, anyways. And it's like, however you want to rewire it or wire it, that's what it's getting through. So what we have to be aware of is that we are in the midst of this, and there are communities being formed as we speak. We've since COVID, right? Since COVID, that was the that's when everybody started disbelieving in systems and shutting down systems and homeschooling their kids and not vaccinating. And then, like it is the beginning of all that doomsday kind of, fear-based control. So,
I would be interested, like we're talking the doomsday, like look at, we've
yeah,
had these discussions almost every time we've gone on. Well, Isha, I think we've had this discussion before too, like
Yeah.
the way the world is going right now, with even those pamphlets that I showed. Maybe we'll talk about those pamphlets and then we'll kind of call it a night. What do you think the cult members that are existing today, or even the ones who are out, who are seeing the world going the way it is now? Like a couple months ago, Congress was saying there's flying saucers in the air, right? And they're just, one thing is next to another. It's like, what is the next dystopian book that we're going to fall into in the next couple months? Do you think that the cult is like going, haha, we've told you so? Or do you think there's a resurgence of people going back, going, oh my God, we were wrong? Like just with the craziness of the world, how do you see that?
I think a bit of both, depending on where you're coming from and depending on, like, I feel depending on how much you're operating out of fear
fear in the Lord.
or coming from a place of peace. I have friends that are on both sides of the spectrum. Some are like, see, I told you so. And then others are like, oh my God, or they're like, I don't believe it. They're just, I think there will continue to be new things that come up.
Yeah.
And
And
whether new, new things that are going to challenge your beliefs in, in society, and even the beliefs about, God, or if you don't believe in God, I guess the cosmos, the universe, and
It's,
even about
it's
yourself.
amazing how, if it was true, how spot on he would have been. This picture here. I got this from one of your other members.
Yeah.
These are one of the pamphlets you'd hand out, and it's amazing that it's showing space aliens at the end of time. Like,
yeah. Well,
if I
those
was a
actually,
member, I'd be crazy. I'd be scared too if I started seeing the world the way it is. To be honest,
that poster actually is supposed to be like that alien spacecraft there. It's actually, from what I remember, it's supposed to be the bad forces, like, of the world, call it the military or whatever, that is being sent on to God's people to wipe them out and kill them and destroy them because they believe in the true God. So in
very
the Bible,
Project Bluebeam.
yes.
Wow.
It talks about in the Bible how all the people that believe in Christ are going to suffer persecution. So not just persecution from like society, but like actual real persecution from the world at large. Like the world will be against you and they'll seek to wipe you out and destroy you just because of your faith and all that. But
so what would you say, Usha, what would you say to somebody that's like considering living in a community or something like that, like a cult?
I would say, first of all, the fewer rules, the better. Just stick to like the very, very basics. But living in a community is also like once a community gets too big, it becomes an organization. And then when something becomes an organization, somebody needs to manage it. Somebody needs to make sure it's going the right way. And, it just, I feel it becomes more problematic. And I think if you're going to be in a community, you should stay small. Maybe you and just maybe a couple other families or something like that, because once things get too big and they become difficult to manage. And I think they become difficult to manage for a reason.
Egos getting there. And power and control, ego.
Like
human things. Yeah.
Exactly. That's where those things like rise. And I don't know, I would say just keep it small, keep it simple, keep it down to the basics, help each other where you can. But a community should really just be a supportive community where you guys support each other physically. I think that is always a good thing. Like physically, if you want to pool your finances, or if you want to like, grow, live on a farm, but you alone can't do it, and other people have this same vision too. They want to grow their own food. They want to, live more off the land and become self-sufficient. Do that. But I don't think that you can like really make it go more farther than that, like extend it to other things like your own personal faith and religion, and what you should believe and what you shouldn't believe, and all those. I think those are all very personal things, and
yeah, no doubt,
it's part of your own personal journey, which I don't know is yours really to make, and nobody else should really have much of a say in it unless you're actually hurting people, or
no doubt.
But I think a community can be very helpful and very positive if done right. But as you can see, it can also be very damaging. So I would advise caution.
That's very true. And like having a community, well, we heard this with children, right? It takes a village to raise a child. So yeah, it's very true. I'm going to try something here, and your younger self, we're sitting across from you right now. What would you say to her? What would you want her to hear?
My younger self, like as a child or a teenager?
Yeah, sure. Start with a child first.
As a child, I would say to continue to follow your intuition, that your intuition wasn't wrong. And as a teenager or young adult, looking back now, I would have probably said, I don't know, get the hell out of there. Take the leap of faith. I think for so many people, they don't get out of something, or they stay in something past the due date because they're fearful, and it is a scary thing, just jumping out into the unknown,
It's terrifying. It is terrifying.
But I mean, somehow everybody that had jumped or taken the leap of faith, they kind of made it. They figured it out, you know.
We got the proof right here, ladies and gentlemen. We got the proof right here. Usha, you know, for myself, thank you so much for, you know, this was 2 hours. And thank you for your time. And I'm going to be doing a lot more reading about all this. This is this is new to me. And thank you for your story. And I hope it was empowering to you to be up here and talk. I know it's helpful to a lot of people, and hopefully more messages come out about your resilience. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me again and for allowing me the opportunity to share my story and share my journey. It by no means is over. I think the journey continues until the day we die, but I am happy that others can witness my journey.
Hey, you found another warrior here. If you want to be friends, we'll be friends, and always willing to chat and
yeah, for sure.
And continue on.
And Usha, as I like to wrap things up, I always like to ask that one question. I kind of gave you a hint a couple of days ago. What is your favorite conspiracy theory right now, and what one do you think is the most probable that could happen out of all of them that we've discussed?
God, there's so many conspiracy theories.
There's so many.
I am personally, my favorite one right now,
Flat Earth.
And I don't even know if it is a theory out there or if I don't know. But my favorite theory right now is that the reason the aliens and, you know, all the other beings out there have taken such an interest in us humans and our choices and our decisions and how, you know, the way we live our life and the way, you know, we're steering things is because not only do our actions and our energies and our frequencies affect the rest of the cosmos, which includes them in it, but also I believe that we have the potential to become, I don't know, more powerful than the gods. Call me crazy, but I believe that we are, we're part, you know, divine. We have their DNA in us, I believe. And because of that, but because we're also our own unique species and creation, we bring something new to the table that didn't exist before. So that in combination with our divinity creates something totally new and spectacular, which I think that thing is the thing that is of interest to the rest of the cosmos out there. Our potential is the thing of interest.
You heard it from her, folks. You heard it from her.
That's
Like,
what I think.
big powers in us. We got big powers. I like that.
Well, thank you so much, Usha, for coming out. Everybody who's watching, give her a follow. Usha, do you want to give out your handle where people can find you and find your illustrious artwork?
How do I put that in there? Just in the chat?
You could just tell us where to find you.
Okay, yeah, you can find me at Usha Kaiser, USHA KAISER, and that's on Instagram. Yeah, mainly Instagram. Basically, I don't really do any of the other ones, but yeah.
Awesome. And everybody else out there, you know what to do. Hit the thing, make the ding, and subscribe. Make sure you get notifications for the rest of the show. We're hoping to have more guests such as this one. Brandon, as usual, it's always been a pleasure working with you, buddy.
Yes.
And to everyone else out there, thanks for sticking with us for a 2 hour and a bit podcast. And we'll see you next week. Everybody, take care.
Thank you so much.